This is Girls Stop Playing, a weekly show that empowers Black women to stop playing with their potential so they can live a life that they love. I'm Koereyelle, your favorite homegirl, and I'm on a mission to help Black women make the money and get the honey. You can have it all as long as you're willing to work. Welcome back to another episode of the Girls Stop Playing podcast. It's your favorite homegirl, Kourtney, here to encourage you to stop playing with your potential and start working for what you want in life and in love. You already know I'm bringing you the information and the conversations to help you make the money and get the honey. You can have it all as long as you are willing to work. And today I have the pleasure, the honor of introducing you to my girl, affectionately known as CEO Courtney. Courtney Newell's in the building. Hey, boo.
Hey, Koereyelle, how you doing, girl?
Well, y'all see, she's not really in the building. Okay, I don't have the pleasure of being with her in studio in real life, but we had to get it in however we could, make it do what it do. So virtually is going to have to do. But I am so excited to have this opportunity to chat with you and introduce you to my audience.
I am so honored to be here. I've been watching you for years and just watching your expansive growth. So it's been awesome to see, and I'm just so excited to be here with you.
Thank you. So I have to start out when I was like thinking about talking to you today. I was like, I gotta shout out my girl Alicia, your girl Alicia, our girl Alicia, who was actually the common denominator in how we actually connected years ago. I think it was like at a WeWork. Alicia was having a book event,
Yes.
and I think you might have been in PR at that time. So I want to start there because I having these conversations, and I've had a podcast for almost a decade now. So a lot of the conversations I'm able to like double back to people who I talked to a long time ago and kind of check in. And even though this is my first time interviewing you for the podcast, it's been amazing to see like the lives that you've lived throughout the years. I think we just have each season is almost like a lifetime because you've done so many things. So take me back to like what you were doing at that time, which I think was PR, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, shout out to Alicia. We go way back, college roommates back. So yeah, so glad she connected us. But I started my PR firm fresh out of college. I went to FIU, go Panthers. And could not find a job. I applied for 200 positions over the country. I was willing to go anywhere. I was willing, and I'm based in Florida. I was willing to go to Arizona, anywhere. I was like, New York, wherever will hire me, I will go. And I got zero application. I got zero interviews from them. And so I was like, okay, well, this is not what I had planned with this good degree that I have now. So I took what I learned at FIU. I was very active on campus, debate team president, students programming council. I was managing a $2 million budget on campus it was equivalent to our version of a student government association. And I was managing PR and marketing, and I had so much experience, and it was like running a mini agency. So when I graduated, I was like, I'm just going to go back to what I know. And at that time, it was social media, it was PR. One of my professors at the time, I feel like I played a pivotal role in him getting a lot of millennial voters. That person eventually ran for president. We won't say who it is. But anyway, so I just went back to what I knew. Started with my PR company. And then through that grew it where I still run that PR company today. We work with some of the largest brands in the world, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Office Depot, and many more who we have very strong NDAs with. So I can't name them all, but that is really my main business. And then during that time, I don't know if I was married or pregnant or had any kids at that time, but since then, I am now married, love my life. We have 3 boys and they are very active. And then we also have these franchises together. So lots going on, never a dull moment in my life.
I love it. Okay, we have so much to talk about. And so the premise of this show, Girls Stop Playing, it's like, how can you stop playing with your potential? How can you stop playing with these ideas that have been in your notebook for years? How can you stop playing with your time? And so I feel like in you just sharing that little bit, your first stop playing moment was, these people are playing with me with these applications. So I'm going to have to figure out what I can do for myself, which was going back to what you know, taking an inventory of your skill set, your expertise, your experience, and then figuring out how you could leverage that to kind of create your own path because nobody was willing to kind of give it to you.
Yeah, it was hard, and I felt like I had done everything right. I went to school, I was very active on campus, and nobody was really giving me an opportunity. And so I remember just having a deep conversation with my mother, and she was like, Courtney, I feel like it's not happening for you because it's not for you. And I was like, oh, that's deep. So yeah, I really had to bet on myself, and I was flat broke. When I graduated, I had like negative dollars in my bank account. Um, and so what I decided to do was I was a pageant girl. That's how I paid for college is I competed in scholarship pageants. And so I was like, okay, I already graduated, but there's this one pageant that I hadn't won. I had competed in it multiple times. It was Miss Palm Beach County. I'm from Palm Beach County, born and raised. So it meant a lot to me. And there honestly weren't many brown girls who had won that title. I feel like I was actually the second. And it's one of the longest state pageants, or one of the longest county pageants, I should say, in the state. So I was really focused on getting that. The prize money was $500, and I had planned for that $500. I had envisioned winning, then putting the crown on my head, what I was going to do with the money. And so that's exactly what I did. I ended up winning, and I took that money and I called my business Crowned, since I was crowned, Crown Marketing and Communication. So yeah, they definitely were playing, but it was a blessing in disguise, right? Because I think that if I had gotten the job or a job, then I would have really been focused on the corporate route as opposed to the entrepreneurial route. And so it changed my life for the better.
It's so funny how those things that feel like, man, a failure. It feels like I have, failed and this isn't working out in the way that I thought it was. So my
Yeah.
plans have failed, but most of the time those failures lead you to what was really for you. So shout out to mama. I gotta write down that quote. It wasn't working for you because it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the current climate post pandemic, I would say like the last 2023 and then where we are right now into 2024 has been so tough for so many people, whether it's, financially with this recession, whether it's just like spiritually, mentally, a lot like we are tired, we are
Yeah.
drained. And for a lot of people, have found themselves needing a pivot, whether it is because they are unemployed and they're looking for a job and people are playing in their face, or they are employed and people are still playing in their face, or they are an entrepreneur. This is a really common one. They're an entrepreneur and the math just ain't mathing no more. And so a
Mhm.
lot of people are at that point where you were way back then. Knowing what you know now, what advice or wisdom can you offer to someone who needs a pivot? Like they need that I saw Sarah Jake's sermon where she said a fresh wind. Like they just need another chance. Like what advice or encouragement can you give to someone who might be feeling stuck right now in that way?
I actually worked on PR with Sarah Jakes Roberts. So shout out to her.
Girl, connection, girl.
Um,
Hey, Sarah, come on down to the show, sis.
Come on down, Sarah. I would say the first thing is just first and foremost, believe that you can, right? So as a man thinketh, so is he. So I feel like that's the first thing and you need to surround yourself with people who believe and see things in you that you don't see in yourself. So that for me was my mom at first. And then outside of her, outside of our home, I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what I don't know, but I knew I didn't know what I needed to know. So I went out and I tried to find a mentor, and I did find one. Another PR agency owner, and he was like, I don't have time to mentor you. And I was like, I'll work for free. He's like, no, I don't have time. And I went on his door, literally, I knocked on his door every day for like a month. And he's like, are you not going to go anywhere? I was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And he eventually became my mentor. So I would say if you can find someone to mentor you, now there is so much information that you can pay for. You can join communities, you can buy courses, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts like this. So I didn't have that luxury back then, but I would say that's another thing. Find a mentor, find a community. And then I think the third thing is just really do an audit of your brilliance zone. I feel like you are able to really be in alignment and make the most that you can make it when you're in alignment. And you do that through knowing your brilliance zone. So really doing an assessment of your skill set, understanding what you're good at, what you need to work at in order to really master that, and where you can go to find those steps to make that actually happen and that mastery happen for you.
Two things that like jumped out at me, and then we got to talk about this brilliant zone. But two things that jumped out at me as you were kind of talking through that was persistence, because you were
Mhm.
like, I'm here, I know what I want, and I'm not going to leave till I get it. And
Yeah.
then people, like you being able to tap back into your network. I think that is also something in our community that we don't do enough talking about. The power of your people, the power of your reputation, the power of connection, the power of relationships. And I got to shout out Alicia again, because I have not seen nobody work a room the way Alicia can work a room. And because y'all were college roommates, I just know you got the same skills, sis. I just know that y'all got this thing. And she will tell you, I always talk to her about that, like, girl, teach me your ways,
Yeah.
because that is so powerful. And it's not something that I was taught. It is not something that I have, if I'm being honest, that I've even learned how to master to this day, but I see the potential in it. So
Yeah.
talk to that point and just the people part. Like, what is your advice, I guess, for, especially because you're in PR and your relationships and your reputation is everything, but
Yeah.
how has that been, beneficial for you? And or what advice can you offer to someone who doesn't necessarily have a strong like network currently?
Yeah, I think the great thing is now I feel like we used to have 6 degrees of separation. I feel like now it's less than one, right? You can always slide in someone's DMs. But I think the first thing for me has always been make the relationships before you need them, because you don't want to be the person who's calling somebody in your desperate hour of need, and them understanding like we haven't talked in forever, or you never call me or anything like that. So I always say make the relationships before you need them. And I feel like there's this thing, and I actually learned this from a friend of ours, named, I'm trying to remember who exactly it was. Okay, I remember who it was. It was Altricia Cook, and she's married now, so forgive me, I can't remember her married name now, but she said that she has friend tours, and those friend tours are basically, they're at this point and at this age, and this point in the game, I just can't have friends, right? I need us to be able, you need to be able to bring something to the table so I can learn something from you. So my group, my squad, we call ourselves the Fab Five, and we've been friends since forever. We were all struggling together when we were in college, and we're still strong like that now, but we're all friend tours. One of them's in HR. So, and I have a lot of employees. I have over 200 employees now. It is crazy sometimes. And I'll call her and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And she'll be like, okay, wait, before you do that, think about this, 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 and this. Or maybe there's another way you can do it. So that's one just example of having a friend tour. So make the relationships before you need them, and really assess what value you bring to the table. If there's someone who I'm trying to make a connection with, or build a relationship with, and I'm actually doing this right now. There's a conference. There's a woman who is a power player who I want to be connected with, and we actually met for lunch recently. Last week we met for lunch, and she was asking me about things, and I was asking her about things. And she's having a conference, and I'm like, I'm going to fly out to your conference to support you. It's about that, like giving before you ever need anything. And it's just, I plan for us to have a long standing friendship, but it's just basically about giving before you try to take.
I love that advice. And I've even heard small, this is a advice, this ain't for you, girl. This you way advanced, but this is for anybody else out there who struggles in this department. um Small like little mementos of just like, I was thinking of you. So with social media being at our fingertips, it could be, I saw this post that shares this resource and I thought about you. It could be, I was online and I saw this article and I thought this might be helpful. I saw this grant, and I thought this would be good for you. So those types of little things that literally cost you nothing, because somebody
Mhm.
listening to this was like, girl, I can't be flying out all around the country. And you look, that's advanced, okay? Baby level,
My
baby
bad, girl. My
level.
bad.
Book, okay? Make a book recommendation, sis. If you can't take a flight, okay, you don't have to do, but there's levels to this,
Yeah.
and you work with what you got. But there are small things to tell people, I was thinking of you, that I think really does go a long way.
Especially when you're in business too, because I feel like when you're in business, there's always like, there's things that I want to do that I'm not doing right now that I can use a grant for, or I can use a resource for. So I 100% agree. Like if you are thinking of me, and I think people just want to know they're being thought of, And that's how you build the relationship. And I think that as you do that, it's reciprocated as well. So then you guys are thinking about each other, and that just makes a relationship that much stronger. So when you do have a big ask, or you do have something that you think would be beneficial for both of you, then you can come together, and it's not like you're a taker and you're always trying to take. It's more like, hey, I think this will both win. And so on my email signature, it says to our success. So I want to win and I want you to win. So that's like how I like to leave every conversation, is to our success mutually.
So when it comes to people on the not so pleasant or not so positive side, because everything is not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. We're not all going to always agree. We're not always going to get along with your work in PR, not necessarily like you telling your business, but how do you recommend professional women, whether you're in corporate, in entrepreneurship and franchise, in the franchise world, whatever, women who are working towards something? What's your advice for, maybe, I don't know if the right term would be like conflict resolution,
Mm.
reputation, like how do you navigate unfriendly spaces, disagreements, when you got to work with people, you don't want to have a bad, like those types of things?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is a very real feeling that I've had. Like, do I really want to say something because I don't want to mess up a potential, like
Yeah.
how do you stay true to yourself but not mess up your name?
That's a great question. And I feel like for me, I deal with big personalities. So when I'm doing, like, we have an event that we're doing in Palm Beach, and it's a big charity gala, and it's massive. And we're talking about some of the richest people probably in the country. It's a lot of personalities that I'm dealing with. And my team is also struggling with some of the personalities, some of the demands, and then just conflict amongst the team sometimes. And so one of the things that I always try to encourage people to do is, it's okay to disagree, but it's just really about how you say things. So if we're having a disagreement on something, and this actually happened last week as well. I had a very interesting last week. But with my team, two girls who are kind of almost trying to fight for the same promotion. And it's almost like a little bit of undermining, it seems like, in front of the rest of the team. And I'm like, hey, you guys can peacefully, you can agree to disagree, but it's really about how you say stuff. Because if you come at someone and you are, you have the attitude, then they're going to meet you back with that. So I always I'm like, hey, how can you diffuse the situation? And I think that that's a skill set we really have to be able to have. Because if just because you have a bad attitude, and some people have off days, like, I always like to give people grace, like, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe, something happened. So I'm just going to give you grace. Now, if it's a recurring thing, then we have to have a conversation about it. But I just feel like as often as you can, try to diffuse the situation and meet people not where they are, because they can be negative. And so I'm the way that I operate is, I'm on an energy level. So I'm never going to be operating in low vibration. So if you're over here acting crazy, or, just taking the kids to school sometimes, like, I see some crazy things, people cutting each other off and all these types of things. And, I'm just like, that's low vibrations for me. So I'm always going to make sure that I'm trying to meet you as much as I can on a high vibration level. So if you have an attitude, you know what, maybe now is not the time to talk to you about this, but we do need to have the conversation about this, but I'm just going to give you some space and time. But just know we do have to have the conversation at some point. Just trying to diffuse the situation is my key, because I deal with a lot of personalities, a lot of between team and between clients. And so it's always a juggle, and I'm still honestly trying to master that myself, but that right now is how I'm getting through it.
You said 200 employees?
More than a little bit over 200. So we were at 200 the last time I counted. That was a few months ago. And we're still actively hiring too. Yes.
Is this across businesses like PR and franchises?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Leadership is another one of those areas that I feel like is talked about on a corporate level, not
Mm-hmm.
so much for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You jump out the gate and start your business, you incorporate your business, and now you are the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And automatically the world tells you, if your business is, big enough just for you, then it's not big enough. And you selfish if you're not giving other people opportunities, all of this rhetoric that is pointing you towards the direction of build a team so you can scale. That's like
Mhm.
the broad statement. It's like, you got to have a team, you got to build a team. I am going to tell you, because you haven't heard this before, but my audience knows, I've said this so many times, like, building a team almost put me out of business
Mm.
mentally, and put me in a mental breakdown. Like, mentally, emotionally, I was not, and if I'm being honest, still am not ready for that leadership position.
Yeah.
And I don't think people talk about it or are willing to admit that it is not just easy if you have, well, most people I don't think necessarily have experience, but it's not something easy. So what, I guess, advice can you offer to someone who is an entrepreneur and who does have a desire to grow their business beyond just themselves, for team management and really people management?
I think that there's so much there because I think I agree with you. I think that the first time when I had a small team, when we were less than 5 people, it was great. It was easy to manage. But the second, honestly, that I actually acquired a franchise. So I acquired this business from a retiree, and the day I took over, I was their boss. But I'm still also running my PR firm that has lots of employees as well. So I'm trying to figure out, like, oh snap. So they're calling me and they're like, "Hey, Courtney, we're out of cups." And I'm like, and they're like, "Hey, Courtney, we have to send this press release, the Today Show, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And so I really did have to take some time to really put some really strong boundaries in place. That was the first thing. Like, hey, these are the only times that you need to really be able to contact me. And this is like some of the stuff, it's not necessary for you to contact me. Because I think that when you're growing a team, you also have to understand that some people just want to be able to have access to you so they feel like they have the security that they need. And it's like, no, you're not going to get fired just because I don't pick up the phone. And you're not going to but you are probably going to annoy me if you call me over stuff that you should know because I pay you well. So there's that dynamic. But the way that I have been able to keep my sanity while scaling is I have some really strong standard operating procedures. I am a perfectionist. I'm very type A. But I feel like, and what I've heard from people who worked for me and who have left and who we have relationships with, is that I'm a happy manager. So I feel like for me, the way that I stay happy is to make sure that not everybody has access to me, because I cannot deal with everybody. So if you look at my phone right now, I literally have over 700 unread text messages. I have like 32,000 unread emails. It's crazy sometimes, but at this point, one, I have like a real strong I have a real strong buffer system with my assistant, and she does not play. She does not play. She's like, what do you need to speak to Courtney about? And that's really important for me because I need somebody to be able to just kind of comb through what only I can do. So I think that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing also with that is with your SOPs, making sure that you are able to train the people on how you want them to be trained. And once I train you, I need you to be able to, I'm a very hands-off person. I'm not a micromanager, although I do expect perfection. But I have SOPs. So there's literally an operating procedure for everything: how to send an email, how to write your email signature. If we have a new hire, this is how you're supposed to do your email signature. Like every single step in my business, and it's definitely in the franchises, I have super strong SOPs because I do feel like when you're trying to scale your business, you do have to have those standard operating procedures in place, and also what I like to call a red velvet rope around your time and your space.
Girl, what does your self-care look like? Because how? How? What do you do on a daily basis? I feel like when people say, "What's your self-care routine?" They're not asking what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah.
What do you do for you on a daily basis that fills you up in a way that you can take on all of this? Because we ain't even talked about the 3 boys, and we ain't even talked about the big man at the house. Like, we only talking about you during the daytime. This is all before 5 p.m. So
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
do on a daily basis for you?
I work out every morning. So I'm obsessed with fitness. And this is a new thing too. Like I feel like it just started really being more intentional. I really started being more intentional about it in the past year or so, maybe less than a year. But what I found is that when I work out for at least 30 to 45 minutes a day in the beginning of my day. So I wake up early. My husband wakes up early too. We wake up early together and we both work out, and we work out separate. So I have my own gym. He has his own gym, and we work out, and I feel like it energizes me. So I'm like, okay, I feel like it's one of those things that it just mentally prepares me for anything that's going to come my way, because I honestly sometimes don't know what's going to come my way. Like one time I have a big project, a big RFP, and then they're like, oh, the water's turned off. And I'm like, what do you mean? And it's lunch hour. Like, we are a smoothie making business. What do you mean the water's off? So stuff like that happens all the time. And so I feel like when I work out, it really allows me to just be able to have that peace. And honestly, at the end of the day, I like to also do some working out too. And it's sometimes just to walk around the neighborhood, or maybe I'll get on the treadmill and do a scenic walk. But I feel like that is a big part of my life. And I think the other thing too is I'm really big on massages. Self-care is very important to me, because I have a lot of people relying on me, and I can't afford a mental breakdown. I can't afford many sick days. Although, I get sick because these kids be bringing all kinds of stuff home, child. you know, so yeah, so big on massages, big on lunch dates. I do lunch dates with women who I want to connect with, or just friends of mine, at least twice a month, different people. I like to host events at my house. So I feel like those things really fill me up and get me prepared. And I understand, not every day is going to be perfect. Some days are going to be harder than others, but that's kind of how I set up my day and how I like to wind down. And I also do like a good glass of Cabernet as well.
Come on, Juan.
Hello.
Okay, so we have to get into the nitty-gritty of the franchise life, though,
Yes.
because I don't know. I don't think I know of anybody personally, aside from you, that is a franchise owner, and definitely nobody who has 4 franchises. So talk to us about your start, and not even just how you got into franchising, but what was your initial thought that said, maybe this is something that I want to explore?
So it was COVID. It was 2020. I had an investment property, and I had a really bad tenant. Oh, really bad tenant. We won't get into that because I probably will need a glass of wine. But anyway, so this tenant, we had this tenant at this point for 2 years, and she was ruining my house. And I was really trying to figure out, because although on paper the property was supposed to have these high profit margins for real estate, I was losing money on it. And I was like, this is not. Now I know typically, and sometimes when you have an investment property, you make money when you sell it, right? Because the value of it will increase year over year. But I just didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I started to explore franchises. And then also during COVID, a lot of my business went away. So I lost a ton of money in the beginning of COVID. I remember March 2020, I had to shut down my office, and we lost probably over $500,000 in contracts. So it was a big blow. And so I was like, something's got to give, something's got to turn. Now I was able to turn that year around by pivoting and basically working with large corporations and kind of getting them together. But I realized at that point I needed to diversify, because I couldn't count on my PR clients, because I was like, look, I just lost all this money. Like, what am I going to do? My investment property was not really an investment property. It was more like a burden. And so I started to kind of look at different franchises. And the first thing that I did was I looked at brands that I love, brands that have been there for a while, brands that were established. And there were 2. Well, one was emerging, and one was a long established brand, and that was Tropical Smoothie. And so I really wanted Crumble. So the brands that I have is I have 3 Crumbles, and I have a Tropical Smoothie Cafe. And I really wanted the Crumble cookies, and it was not available in my area. And I called them probably one time a week for like 6 to 8 months. I was like very much annoying them. They're like, Courtney, we told you the territories are sold. And I'm like, well, I just believe that it's going to come open. And I just want to make sure that I'm on the top of your mind. As you can see, Koereyelle, I have a trend. If I really want something, I am going to get it. I am relentless. And so that didn't happen for a while. I did find a tropical smoothie for sale because there were none available in my area. And that's also one of the things that I feel like we don't talk enough about, and something I'm really passionate about, is this wealth transfer that's happening. There are 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day in the United States, and 33% of them own a business or a franchise. And so I'm like, that is some serious money. And when you acquire a business, the thing that I love about it is you have instant customers. You have an instant mentor. You have instant profit. So I was really impressed by that specific business, and it had been around for 18 years. And it was a great buy. Like it was a really great buy. And that was my first jump into franchising. And then a month later, Crumble calls and they're like, hey, so about those spots, those territories, I'm like, oh, thank you, God. Like this was for me. And so that happened, and I went from 0 to 4 franchises in 18 months, and it was insane. And I feel like when I tell people that, I'm like, did I really do that? That is crazy. Because to just go from 1 in a year I felt I was very proud of myself. But to go from 0 to 4 in 18 months was wild. Um, but but yeah,
How, Courtney?
that's how I started.
Because people are gonna forget what people are gonna think. What I'm thinking right now, what does it really take in terms of not even just investment, but I do want to know like what's a range for like how much money are we talking here, but also like qualifications, because I'm sure it's not just you show up with the check and you're approved. There is like a process that you have to go through. So what are like the requirements? And obviously we're not talking about one specific franchise, but in your research, what would you say is just like a range that you found?
I think the ranges, and so for me, I'm like a 7-figure girl. If it's not making 7 figures, to me, it's not worth my time. And so when I'm looking at franchises, I'm looking at the ones that have, on average, you're going to be making $1 million revenue. And so for most of them, you're going to be investing anywhere from $500,000 to upwards of $2 million. So I would say like a healthy range for a business that's going to be able to make you 7 figures you're going to probably spend anywhere from 500,000 to about 650, maybe 750,000.
And when you say spend, are you talking about a franchising fee? Are you talking about for the location? Like what is included in that number you just said?
Yeah, so that's all inclusive. So typically how it works is the criteria for the franchise, they want to make sure that you have some skin in the game. So they're going to probably more than likely say you need to have at least $100,000 liquid cash. They're going to also want to see your net worth is at least $1 million. And oftentimes, if you're a homeowner, you can make it up that way. But those are pretty much the two criteria. And then also, they want to know that you have some experience managing a business, because I think that people think managing a franchise is easy. And I will say it has been much easier than starting my business and building it from scratch. Because literally with my stores, I have lines wrapped around the building regularly. And so for my stores, it was much easier for me to be able to make profit with the franchises than I was with my own company. You can't get funding like you can with franchises. So with franchises, I told you that number, but you can also get an SBA loan for those. So you can put down as little as 10%. And if you get a good deal, you can find, and I've helped people be able to find franchises for $0 down. So they're buying it from a retiree, and the retiree just is like, I'm done. I don't have anyone who I can hand it down to. I will mentor you. I just don't want my asset to go away. I want someone else to take it over. You can give me $0 down. I'll finance it for you. I'll finance the loan. And then you can basically pay it off with dividends over your monthly profits. So, you can really make it that way so that you don't have to put all the money up. But that includes the build out. And that's something that, a lot of people don't really think about, is when you get a location, that's your name that's going to be on that lease. It's not the company's name. It's not the franchise name. It's you personally signing and guaranteeing that loan for that space. So that's the construction cost, because the construction typically is going to cost you anywhere from, on the lower end, maybe $100,000. On the higher end, I've seen construction costs, upwards of $2 million, especially if it's an out parcel. So say like a McDonald's or like a Chick-fil-A, because you have to have the land, and it's actually like an actual building that you're putting on it, as opposed to being inside of a out parcel or something like that. So yeah, that is kind of all inclusive. And then you have to think about your staff. You have to think about the ingredients if you're in the food space. So that's really going to be ultimately like the initial cost is anywhere from that range. Now, I will say, Koereyelle, there are some franchises that are much cheaper to invest in. So there's like cleaning company franchises, there's pest control franchises, and they don't have those high criteria, but also the profit margins are much slimmer as well. So, just kind of pointing out that you can go low end or you can go high end, but if you want high profit and high revenue, you definitely will have to invest a little bit more.
And are there different structures for franchises? Because you mentioned basically assuming someone else's franchise. But then when I think of franchise that I also think about like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A,
Yeah.
where that seems like a corporate franchise that wouldn't necessarily be coming from an individual.
Yeah. So with Chick-fil-A, and with McDonald's too, well, Chick-fil-A specifically. So Chick-fil-A, they're part owned by corporate and part owned by the actual franchisee. And so I don't really know all of the details about Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A's are very profitable though. I do know that much. We have a colleague of ours who owns some of the um, highest producing Chick-fil-A's in the country are in the state of Florida, in our neighborhoods. So we've had many a conversation about Chick-fil-A. But what I understand is, so yes, there are different structures. Most of them, though, are going to be where you own 100% of the business. Chick-fil-A is an exception to the rule, but most of them, you're going to own 100% of the business. And then after that 100% of the business, you basically pay them a royalty fee. That royalty fee tends to be anywhere from, I've seen as low as 2%, I've seen as high as 33%. And so that really just depends on the concept. But yeah, it kind of ranges.
And then last franchise question, in comparing the types of franchises in terms of industry, what we have all heard on, I mean, Shark Tank and endless, entrepreneurs have talked about how difficult the restaurant business is. How is the restaurant business in comparison to a crumble cookie or a tropical smoothie? Like, would you still, if you had to do it all over again, would you still go food route versus like a um chiropractic, the joint or that type of franchise?
Yeah. For me, I always wanted one that was going to require as least skill as possible. And so it's really easy for me to train someone how to make a smoothie or how to bake cookies or, how to make a cake or anything like that. But with a joint chiropractic, I have to literally be able, and for me, again, I'm just very type A. I need to be able to know that if someone quits, I can still run the business without them. And so for me, although my employees, and all of my team, all of my staff, I'll say across all the organizations, I feel like we have a bunch of A players. And I feel like when we vet them, we're like, we train, if they're not already an A player, I feel like they have the desire to be an A player. So we have a great team through and through. So I feel like although we can probably train and get people in the door and train within a week, that's not to say that the people who I have aren't amazing, because they 100% are. But for me, when I'm thinking about an investment, I need to be able to know that if I have to step in and I have to literally bake the cookies, or I have to, make the smoothies or anything like that, whatever franchise it is, or fry the chicken, if it's, like Chick-fil-A or something like that, that I can step in and I can do it myself. With joint chiropractic, you're going to have an actual chiropractor or chiropractic physician who is there, who can do the work. And what's for them not to say, okay, well, I see you making this profit, but I feel like I can just go and open up my own version of it. So, that's for me why I'm so resistant against it. I think that when I think about restaurant and the restaurant space, one thing that I do love is people have to eat 3 times a day. So, for me, that means that there's opportunity, and there's such an expansive menu at most of the restaurants we call it QSR, which is quick service restaurant. Within the QSR space, there's so many SKUs on those menus that people really can come for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, you can really go to a tropical smoothie and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and for the whole week and have something new every single day. And so I think that is what's amazing. And that's why I personally love the food space. But I will say, I have talked to people who are crushing it, and they have amazing pest control. There's another franchisee who I met recently, and he has a bunch of like Tire Plus or some version of that, like an oil change concept. So you can win in any of them, but I just feel like you have to really understand the concept and be willing to get your hands dirty, quite literally, if you are in that oil change space. But that's just my opinion. I feel like the food space, when we think about restaurants, I think about the QSR space a little bit different, because a big restaurant with an expansive menu, with a liquor license and all that stuff, I feel like that is super complex. But a few SKUs, even if it's a McDonald's or anything like that, I feel like it's a lot easier to run, and it has a much lower chance of shutting down.
That is such a good point that you made. Like, girl, I can't get in there and crack no backs. I never even would have thought of that, but that is such something that's a good place to start. Like, what can you pull these kids in here and we're gonna have to handle this night shift? Like,
Yeah.
you have to be thinking about how you can be self-reliant. So I love that you
Mhm.
made that point. Now,
Yeah.
Courtney, I cannot let you get out of here without talking about the Future Proof podcast because you are doing all of this and you got these kids and this husband. So I'm not going to say how because I guess we got to listen to the podcast to figure it out. But I am going to ask you to leave the ladies with a word of not encouragement, but more so wisdom, something that you wish somebody would have taught you that would have made your journey easier, more stress free in any way, in any capacity when it comes to marriage, motherhood, or, as a professional woman in your entrepreneurial career. A simple piece of advice that you wish someone would have shared that could make things easier.
I think the advice that I wish someone would have shared with me is that it's okay to want it all and it's okay to expect it all. Just be open to accepting help to get it all. And so for me, when I have sometimes like I have a big event this weekend that was a last minute invite and it's like an invite only event that I need to be at. And so I'm, hey, mom, hey, mother-in-law, hey, like, hey, sister-in-law, hey, we both need to be there. Is there any way that you all can watch these three little babies of mine? And that's really, and just being able to receive it and accept it, I think that that's been made all the difference in my journey because I have a real strong village. You know how they say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a business to scale a bit. It takes a village to scale a business. And so my village is strong. They are close in proximity. Um, and so I feel like that is really the difference maker in my world is being able to accept help. And sometimes it's not always family. Sometimes it's a friend like, hey, I know this is last minute, but if you come over and watch these kids, I'll pay you this. I'll make sure you have some food wherever you want. I'll get it Ubered, those types of things. And I also will owe you one. And I'm always good for my IOUs. So I feel like accepting that help and not being afraid to ask for it is something that I wish I would have received, I think, before more so than anything. Because I feel like someone told me that, but I wasn't really open to receiving it. I really liked to be able to be superwoman and not be able to ask for help. But it's like, no, girl, we're not doing that anymore. I'm in my soft season.
Come on. Allowing others to be soft for you because we could shout that soft season all day, but then somebody just want to open the door and you like, I got it. I'm pulling in 27 grocery bags, and my husband be like, "Why you just didn't say you was outside?"
Why?
It just
Yeah.
doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's my default setting is how can I get all these bags in the house in one trip? So
Yeah.
just letting people, because most the people who love you, they want to lighten your load. So
I
accepting help,
do.
it's sounds so easy, but it is a big one. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That is something that you struggle with as well. Okay, so let the people know where they can find you. I know that you are so full of resources, not just in the professional space, but period. You are an inspiration and you got that information. So let the people know where they can find you and stay connected.
Of course. So first thing is on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of them. I'm at CEO Courtney. That's Courtney spelled the classic way with a C. And then also, I have trainings and resources that I do if you're interested in franchising. I have a franchise masterclass that I do. I do that live once a month. And I also have different programming on my website, CourtneyNewell.com. So you can find it all there. Follow me. And yeah, I would love to be connected. And let me know Koereyelle sent you too.
Yes, look, tell her your favorite homegirl sent you her way. I'm about to get me a little consult in, y'all, because something your girl is ready to pivot. Okay, we're gonna see what this little crumble cookie talk about, baby. Courtney, I appreciate you so much as always, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Girls Stop Playing. I love you, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.